All right, let's jump right into it. You've probably seen the news. The government shutdown is just causing absolute chaos at our airports. Well, the White House just dropped a really unusual solution. They're sending in ICE agents. So today, we're going to break down exactly what this plan is, why the administration says it's a must, and, what it all means for executive power when things get tough. And this quote right here, which comes from former ICE Director Tom Homan, really gets to the heart of how the White House sees this. They're not just looking at this airport mess as, a pain for travelers. They're framing it as a high-stakes situation that needs a big, powerful response, and fast.
Okay, so before we get into the solution, we really need to understand the problem as they see it. From the administration's perspective, this shutdown isn't just slowing things down a bit. They're saying it has pushed the entire airport system right to the edge, to its breaking point.
So according to former ICE Director Tom Homan, this is creating this whole domino effect of problems. Think about it. You've got TSA agents who are totally overwhelmed, they're not even getting paid, and that's causing these huge, snarled security lines at all the major airports. And all of this is going down while the talks to fund the Department of Homeland Security are basically going nowhere.
And yeah, the administration is basically saying they're done waiting. Homan mentioned that the president is just tired of waiting for some political deal to happen. He feels like the American people are being held hostage by all this. So that feeling of urgency, that impatience, that's exactly what kicked off this new plan.
So what's the plan? Well, it's a pretty bold and definitely unconventional move. They're basically taking resources from one federal agency and using them to fix a crisis in a totally different one. This is not your typical government response.
At the core of it is this. They're deploying Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, that's ICE, to airports all over the U.S. And their job, as it's been described, is to take the pressure off the overworked TSA folks and honestly just get those lines moving again.
And the guy the president has put in charge of this whole operation, that's Tom Homan. He's the one running the show, which, of course, makes him the go-to person explaining how it's all supposed to work.
Okay, so the big question is, how is this actually going to work, right? Like, are ICE agents suddenly going to become TSA screeners? Well, no, not exactly. Homan keeps using this specific term to describe the strategy. He calls it a force multiplier. Let's break down what he means by that.
See, the idea here isn't to have ICE agents doing the really specialized work of a TSA screener. Nope, the plan is for them to handle all the other stuff, the non-specialized, supporting tasks. And that is supposed to free up the trained TSA officers to focus on the one job that only they can do. It essentially multiplies their effectiveness.
And what's super clear here is how they're splitting up the work. Homan has been really clear on this point. ICE agents will be doing things like managing the exit lanes or checking your ID before you even get to the main screening checkpoint. They will absolutely not be running the X-ray machines or doing any physical searches. That's a key distinction.
So you can see the logic play out right here. Step 1. ICE agents come in and handle those support tasks. This frees up the TSA officers who can then focus 100% on actual screening. The end result, at least according to the White House, should be faster, more efficient lines for everyone.
And this is important, the story gets a lot bigger here. The administration isn't just selling this as a smart way to fix long airport lines. For Tom Homan, this whole plan is directly tied to a much bigger conversation about national security, a conversation that he says starts right at the southern border.
To really get where he's coming from, you have to understand his core argument, that our security inside the country is directly linked to who's coming across the border. For him, a threat that starts at the border doesn't just, stay there. And to make his point, Homan throws out this huge number, 2 million. 2 million known gotaways. And what he means by that is people who crossed the border and were never caught under the last administration. He's holding this up as a massive unresolved security risk. And his take on that number, it's pretty blunt. This quote really tells you how seriously he sees this whole thing. He's framing it as this urgent threat that he feels the current White House is finally getting a handle on. And that's the backdrop for this whole airport plan. You see, Homan gives the president credit for creating what he calls the most secure border in our nation's history. So he's positioning the current policies as the fix for past issues, but he's also saying, look, threats are still out there and we have to stay on top of it.
So when you take a step back, what are we really looking at here? It's a pretty complex situation, right? You've got a political fight over funding that has now led to this totally unprecedented move, using federal law enforcement in a whole new way.
So let's recap the key takeaways. First, you've got the White House using executive action to get around a political stalemate. Second, you have an immigration agency,
ICE, being repurposed to handle airport logistics. And finally, this whole thing is being presented as both a practical fix for travel headaches and as a key piece of a much larger security strategy. And all of this really leaves us with one big question to think about. What does it actually mean when one government agency's mission is used to solve a completely different agency's crisis? I mean, this move really blurs the lines between their traditional roles. It raises some big questions about how flexible our government can be in a crisis, and maybe more importantly, what kind of precedent this sets for the future.